I was sitting in Helen's old rocking chair when my son Todd stood over me, his expensive suit catching the afternoon light. He was 39 years old and talking to me like I was a child. "If you don't want to go to the nursing home, get a job," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. I looked up at him and simply smiled. Without a word, I stood up and walked to my bedroom, pulled out a single suitcase, and started packing. Todd watched from the doorway, confused. Exactly 60 minutes later, a black Mercedes with tinted windows pulled up to the gate, and the horn blared twice. Todd rushed to the window, his face twisted in confusion. "Who the hell is that?" he muttered, pressing his nose against the glass like a kid at a candy store. I calmly walked toward the front door with my suitcase in hand, not bothering to look back at him. A uniformed chauffeur stepped out of the Mercedes. His name was Gerald, and he was a professional through and through. "Good afternoon, Mr. Whitmore," he said with a respectful nod, taking my suitcase from my hand. "Shall we?" "We shall," I replied, and started walking toward the car. Todd practically exploded out the front door. Dad, wait. What is this? Where are you going? Who is that?" I stopped and turned to face my son. His wife, Stephanie, had appeared behind him now, her arms crossed, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her designer blouse. They both looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You told me to get a job," I said calmly, "or move out. So I'm moving out. But this car, who?" Todd stammered. I took a deep breath. 23 years I'd kept this secret. 23 years I'd lived modestly in this house, driving a 10-year-old sedan, shopping at discount stores, all while Todd assumed I was barely scraping by on Social Security. I'd done it on purpose. I'd wanted him to build character, to learn the value of hard work, to become a man who earned his own way. "Todd," I said, "I'm not broke. I never was." His face went pale. "What are you talking about? When you were 16, I founded Whitmore Industrial Solutions. We manufactured commercial refrigeration systems for restaurant chains nationwide. I built that company from nothing, working 18-hour days for 12 years. When you were 16, I sold it for $47 million. Stephanie gasped. Todd's mouth fell open. "I invested wisely," I continued. "I'm currently worth about $19 million, give or take. I've been living off dividends, donating to charities, and keeping quiet because I wanted you to develop your own character. I wanted you to work hard, struggle a little, learn what really matters in life. You let me." Todd's shock was transforming into rage now. His face flushed red. "You let me struggle through college with student loans. You watched me work at that awful retail job, getting yelled at by customers for $9 an hour. You let Stephanie and me scrimp and save for our down payment while you had millions. I wanted you to build something of your own," I said quietly. "And for what it's worth, I paid off half your student loans anonymously. You just didn't know it." Todd's hands were shaking. He pulled out his phone, his fingers moving frantically across the screen. Then he held it up to my face, and his voice went cold and calculating. "You want to know what I've been doing, Dad? I've been documenting you. This is security footage from Maple Street Grocery 3 weeks ago. Watch." I looked at the screen. It showed me at the checkout counter, asking the clerk something. Then, a minute later, asking the same question again. Then, 5 minutes after that, asking the same question a third time. My stomach dropped. I remembered that day. It had been the anniversary of Helen's death, and I'd been distracted, lost in memories of my wife. I'd been thinking about her smile, the way she used to hum while cooking dinner, and I'd genuinely forgotten I'd already asked the clerk about the sale on coffee. "I've been collecting evidence like this for weeks," Todd said, his voice now smooth and professional, like he was closing a business deal. "I've got statements from neighbors. I've got medical records showing you declined a cognitive screening. I've got bank records showing strange withdrawals. I've already spoken with an attorney about having you evaluated for competency." Stephanie stepped forward, a smirk on her face. "We're filing for conservatorship, Carson. For your own protection, of course." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Conservatorship. They wanted control of my money, my decisions, my entire life. They wanted to declare me mentally incompetent. You can't be serious, I said. Dead serious, Todd replied. The hearing is scheduled for next week. And you know what? Now that I know you're worth $19 million, I'm even more convinced you need protection. From yourself. Gerald stepped forward, his hand on my elbow. Mr. Whitmore, perhaps we should go. Todd pointed at Gerald. You take him anywhere, and I'll call the police for elder kidnapping. You're interfering with a family matter. I'm not being kidnapped, I said firmly. I'm leaving of my own free will. I got into the Mercedes, and Gerald closed the door behind me. As we pulled away, I could see Todd on his phone, already calling someone, probably his lawyer. I'd thought revealing my wealth would shut him down, would make him realize I didn't need his pity or his nursing home threats. Instead, I'd just shown him exactly what he could steal. Gerald drove me to the Riverside Grand Hotel, a beautiful old building downtown with marble columns and crystal chandeliers. He helped me check into the penthouse suite, and I found myself standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. I'd escaped Todd's nursing home threat, but now I faced something far worse. A legal battle that could strip away my autonomy, my freedom, everything I'd worked for. I called my attorney the next morning. Frank Morrison was 72, sharp as a tack, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He'd handled the sale of my company 2 decades ago, and I trusted him completely. We met at his office at 9 o'clock. Frank's office smelled like old leather and coffee. He sat behind his mahogany desk, reading through the conservatorship petition Todd had filed, his expression growing darker with each page. Carson, he said finally, setting the papers down. This is more serious than I expected. How serious? Todd's built a surprisingly strong case. Look at what he's gathered. Frank spread the documents across his desk. Medical records showing you declined a cognitive screening at your last physical. Why did you decline? I didn't think it was necessary. I feel fine. That's going to be used against you. Then there are statements from 3 of your neighbors claiming you seemed withdrawn and not yourself after Helen died 2 years ago. I was grieving my wife of 42 years, I said, my voice rising. Of course I was withdrawn. I understand that. But the court will hear behavior changes and personality shifts. Then there's this. Frank held up a bank record. You withdrew $15,000 in cash last month. Why? I donated it to the Veterans Hope Shelter, anonymously. They're doing good work with homeless vets, and I wanted to help. Do you have any proof of that donation? No. That's what anonymous means, Frank. He sighed. So on paper, it looks like you withdrew a large sum of cash for no documented reason. That's going to be painted as confusion or poor judgment. And then there's this. He held up another document. A statement from Dr. Raymond Pierce, a psychologist and Todd's friend, suggesting you show warning signs of cognitive decline based on Todd's descriptions of your behavior. I felt my hands clenching into fists. This is all twisted. Everything has an explanation. I believe you, Frank said, but we need to prove it. I recommend you undergo an independent cognitive evaluation immediately. We need to show the court you're completely competent. Fine. Set it up. I'll schedule it for 3 days from now. In the meantime, document everything you do. Keep receipts. Write down your activities. Stay social. We need to show you're independent and functioning well. Over the next 3 days, I threw myself into preparation. I reconnected with old business associates. Robert Sullivan, who'd been my partner in the refrigeration business, agreed to testify about my sharp business mind. I visited my primary care doctor, Dr. Lisa Brennan, a kind woman in her early 50s who'd been treating me for 10 years. She wrote a detailed letter confirming my excellent health, both physical and mental. The cognitive evaluation took place at an independent medical facility. I sat in a sterile white room for 3 hours, answering questions, solving puzzles, remembering word lists, drawing shapes. It felt ridiculous, proving I could think, but I did it, and I passed with flying colors. The evaluator, a neutral neuropsychologist, said my cognitive function was excellent for my age, actually above average. Frank seemed pleased. This is good, Carson. Very good. We'll present this at the hearing. The hearing took place at the County Superior Court on a gray Thursday morning. The courtroom was all dark wood and American flags, with rows of benches and a judge's bench that seemed to loom over everything. Judge Patricia Hawthorne presided. She was maybe 55, with steel gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, and an expression that gave nothing away. Todd sat at the other table with his attorney, Marcus Vance. Marcus was maybe 45, with perfectly styled dark hair, an expensive Navy suit, and the kind of smooth smile that made my skin crawl. He looked like he spent more time in court than at home. Marcus presented Todd's case first. He was good, I had to admit. He painted a picture of me as a grief-stricken, declining elderly man making irrational financial decisions. He emphasized the $15,000 cash withdrawal as evidence of confusion. "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice full of concerned compassion, "Mr. Whitmore is a man who's lost his way since his wife's death. His son, Todd Whitmore, only wants to protect his father from making decisions that could harm him financially and personally. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of cognitive decline and poor judgment." Then it was Frank's turn. He presented my clean cognitive evaluation. The neuropsychologist's report was crystal clear. I was competent, capable, and showed no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. Dr. Brennan testified next, speaking clearly about my excellent health, my regular checkups, my stable vital signs, my sharp memory during appointments. Robert Sullivan took the stand after her. He was 70 now, with thick white hair and a commanding presence. "I've known Carson Whitmore for 35 years, he said. "I partnered with him to build a multi-million-dollar company. I still meet with him monthly for lunch. His mind is as sharp as it was 20 years ago. Sharper, even. We discuss investments, market trends, business strategy. He's more financially savvy than men half his age." I was starting to feel hopeful. The evidence was on my side. The truth was on my side. Then Marcus Vance stood up with a smile that made my blood run cold. "Your Honor, I have a surprise witness. I'd like to call Dr. Philip Gardner to the stand." Frank's head snapped up. "We hadn't been notified of any additional witnesses." "Objection, Your Honor. We weren't informed of this witness." "Your Honor," Marcus said smoothly, "Dr. Gardner only came to my attention late yesterday evening. His testimony is crucial to this case." Judge Hawthorne frowned but nodded. "I'll allow it, but this is highly irregular, Mr. Vance." Dr. Philip Gardner walked into the courtroom. He was maybe 64, with thinning gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses, wearing a white coat with a hospital badge. He looked every bit the respectable neurologist. He was sworn in and sat in the witness box. Marcus approached him. "Dr. Gardner, can you tell the court about your interaction with Mr. Carson Whitmore?" "Yes," Dr. Gardner said, his voice calm and professional. 6 months ago, Mr. Whitmore came to the emergency room at County General Hospital. He appeared disoriented and confused. We ran tests and observed possible transient ischemic attack symptoms. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "That's not true," I whispered to Frank. "What?" Frank whispered back. "I went to the ER 6 months ago for chest pain. It turned out to be heartburn from spicy food. I wasn't confused. I wasn't disoriented." But Dr. Gardner was still talking, and Marcus was presenting medical records, official hospital records with my name, showing exactly what Dr. Gardner described. Disorientation, confusion, possible mini-stroke. Judge Hawthorne leaned forward, studying the records, her expression deeply concerned. Frank stood up. "Your Honor, I request a recess to review these documents. This is the first we're hearing of this." "Granted," Judge Hawthorne said. "We'll reconvene in 1 hour." In a conference room down the hall, Frank and I pored over the medical records. They looked official. They had the hospital letterhead, the right forms, all the proper signatures. But the information was wrong. "Carson, you're absolutely certain this isn't what happened?" Frank asked. "Frank, I remember that day perfectly. I had eaten a big plate of buffalo wings, and 2 hours later my chest started hurting. I went to the ER thinking it might be my heart. They did an EKG, which was normal, gave me an antacid, and sent me home. That's it. No confusion, No disorientation. No mention of a stroke. Then these records have been falsified or altered, Frank said grimly, but proving that in the next hour is going to be impossible. When we returned to the courtroom, Frank did his best. He questioned Dr. Gardner, trying to poke holes in his testimony. But Dr. Gardner stuck to his story, calm and professional, with official documents to back him up. Judge Hawthorne called a halt at 5 o'clock. I need time to review all of this evidence carefully. The medical records Dr. Gardner presented are concerning, but so is the independent cognitive evaluation presented by Mr. Morrison. I'm ordering a full neurological evaluation by a court-appointed physician before we proceed further. The hearing will reconvene in 2 weeks. She banged her gavel, and it was over. I'd won a temporary reprieve, but I'd also been dealt a devastating blow. Those medical records, true or false, had damaged my credibility. The judge was concerned, and now I had to undergo another evaluation, this time by someone the court chose. As we left the courthouse, I heard Todd's voice behind me. "See you in 2 weeks, Dad." I didn't turn around. I returned to the Riverside Grand Hotel, feeling like I'd been in a boxing match. My ribs hurt from tension, my head pounded, and I couldn't shake the image of those falsified medical records. How had Todd managed it? How deep did this corruption go? The answer started coming the next morning when my accountant called. Joyce Palmer was 56, a sharp-minded CPA who'd been managing my finances for 15 years. Her voice on the phone was tight with worry. "Carson, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Someone with power of attorney authorization attempted to transfer $250,000 from your primary investment account yesterday. I blocked it because I know you never gave anyone power of attorney." "But Carson, whoever did this had official-looking documents. They knew account numbers, security questions, everything." My hands went cold. "Todd, I can't prove it was him, but the timing is suspicious. I've locked down all your accounts with additional security measures, but you need to figure out what's happening. If someone has this much information about your finances, they could do real damage." I called Frank immediately. He arrived at my hotel within the hour, and we sat in my suite, trying to piece together how Todd had gotten access to that information. "We need a private investigator," Frank said. "Someone who can dig into Todd's background, his connections, find out how he's pulling this off." Frank knew someone. Danny Torres, 42 years old, a former police detective who'd gone private 5 years ago. Danny had a reputation for being thorough, discreet, and most importantly, honest. Frank called him, and Danny agreed to meet us that afternoon. Danny was shorter than I expected, maybe 5 feet 9 inches, with dark hair graying at the temples and sharp brown eyes that seemed to take in everything. We met in Frank's office, and I told him everything. "I'll start digging," Danny said, pulling out a notebook. "But I need you to do something for me, Mr. Whitmore. You need to go to that court-ordered neurological evaluation and ace it. While you're doing that, I'll find out what your son's really up to." The court-appointed neurologist was Dr. Harrison Webb, 58 years old, with gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a calm professional demeanor. His office was in a medical building downtown, all white walls and certificates on display. I spent 2 full days there, undergoing every test imaginable: misery scans, cognitive assessments, memory tests, coordination exercises, blood work. Dr. Webb was thorough but seemed fair. I answered every question, completed every task, and left feeling confident. I'd performed well. I knew I had. While I waited for Dr. Webb's report, Danny kept digging. 3 days after my evaluation, he called with news. "Carson, I need to show you something. Can you meet me at Frank's office?" The 3 of us sat around Frank's conference table, while Danny spread out a stack of papers. "Your son Todd is drowning," Danny said bluntly. "His construction company, Premier Builders LLC, is failing. He owes $230,000 to various creditors. He took out a high-interest loan from a lender called Fast Cash Solutions, and that's about as shady as it sounds. They charge 22% interest. He's behind on his mortgage by 3 months. The bank sent a foreclosure notice last week. He's got maybe 90 days before he loses the house." I felt a sick twist in my stomach. My son was desperate. Desperate people do terrible things. There's more, Danny continued. Stephanie has credit card debt of $83,000. High-end boutiques, luxury handbags, jewelry. She's got a shopping addiction, and it's bankrupting them. Between the two of them, they're in a financial hole so deep they can't see daylight. So this whole conservatorship thing is about money, I said. About your money, Danny corrected. If Todd can get control of your finances, even temporarily, he can pay off his debts, save his house, and live comfortably. You're his lottery ticket. Frank leaned back in his chair. This actually helps us. We can show motive. Todd isn't a concerned son. He's a desperate debtor, trying to access his father's wealth. But then my phone rang. It was my daughter, Amanda. She lived in Seattle with her husband Brad and their 2 kids. She was 35, worked as a marketing consultant, and we talked every Sunday. But this wasn't Sunday. Dad? Her voice was shaky. What's going on? Todd called me. He says you're sick, that you're not thinking clearly, that you might have dementia. Amanda, that's not true. He sounded really worried, Dad. He's flying me in tomorrow. He says we need to talk about what's best for you. I explained everything to her. The real story. Todd's debts. The conservatorship scheme. She listened quietly. I need to see you, she said finally, face to face. I need to look you in the eye and know you're okay. Come, I said. Please come. Amanda flew in the next day. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown, just the 2 of us. She hugged me tight when she arrived, and I could feel her trembling. I've been so scared, she said. Todd made it sound like you were falling apart. I showed her everything. The cognitive evaluation results, Danny's findings about Todd's debts, the evidence of the falsified medical records. Her face cycled through shock, anger, and sadness. I can't believe he'd do this, she whispered. He's my brother. People do terrible things when they're desperate, I said. I learned that the hard way. I'll testify for you if you need me to, Amanda said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I won't let him do this to you. I felt a surge of gratitude so strong it brought tears to my eyes. At least one of my children still saw me as their father, not a bank account. But 2 days later, Frank called with news that shattered my fragile hope. Carson. Dr. Webb submitted his report to the court. And Frank's pause told me everything. Despite your excellent performance on all the tests, his report concludes you show subtle signs of cognitive impairment and questionable judgment. He's recommending a limited conservatorship. That's impossible. I aced every test. I know. I've got a copy of the test results right here, and they're outstanding. But his written interpretation contradicts the data. Something's wrong. Danny was already on it. By that evening, he'd discovered the connection. Dr. Harrison Webb's daughter, Emily Webb, worked at Premier Builders LLC. She was Todd's office manager. Dr. Webb had been compromised from the start. Todd had arranged for him to be appointed, probably through connections in the court system, and Dr. Webb had repaid the favor by writing a false report. We can challenge this, Frank said. We can expose the conflict of interest. But before we could, I received a registered letter by courier. Todd had filed an emergency motion for temporary conservatorship based on Dr. Webb's report. The emergency hearing was in 4 days. If the judge granted it, Todd would have immediate control over my finances, pending a final determination that could take months. I could be locked out of my own money within days. That night, sitting alone in my hotel suite, I stared out at the city lights and wondered how much more I could take. Every time I solved one problem, Todd found a new way to attack. Every time I built a defense, he tore it down. I thought about Helen. She'd been the steady one in our marriage, the voice of reason, the calm in every storm. What would she tell me now? Fight, I imagined her saying. Fight for what's right, Carson. Don't you dare give up. So I wouldn't. But I was running out of time, running out of moves, and Todd was always one step ahead. Frank, Danny, and I met the next morning in an emergency strategy session at Frank's office. We had 72 hours before the emergency hearing, and we needed to expose Dr. Webb's corruption and prove the ER records were falsified. We're going to work around the clock, Frank said, rolling up his sleeves. Danny, you focus on the medical records. Find out how they were created and who was involved. I'll work on the legal challenge to Dr. Webb. Carson, you stay visible and active. Document everything you do. We need to show you're functioning perfectly. Danny hit the ground running. He spent the next 2 days tracking down the source of those fraudulent ER records. He discovered that the ER doctor who supposedly treated me, Dr. Philip Gardner, had no record of working that shift 6 months ago. The hospital confirmed Dr. Gardner had been on vacation in Florida that entire week. Someone had created completely fake medical records. Danny pulled security footage from the hospital and found something damning. Todd, meeting with a hospital administrator named Gary Thornton 2 months ago in a parking garage. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. Gary had gambling debts. Danny traced a payment of $12,000 from one of Todd's accounts to Gary 2 weeks after that meeting. Gary Thornton had created the fake medical records in exchange for cash. While Danny investigated, I tried to line up support. I reached out to old friends, business connections, anyone who could vouch for my character and competence. One of those calls went to Senator Douglas Hendricks. I donated to his first campaign 20 years ago when he was an unknown city councilman. He'd never forgotten it. Carson Whitmore. The senator's warm voice came through the phone. It's been too long. What can I do for you? I explained my situation. The senator listened without interrupting, then said, This is elder abuse, plain and simple. Let me make some calls. I can't interfere with the court, but I can make sure the right people are paying attention. I also reached out to 3 major news outlets. I didn't give them the full story yet, but I planted seeds. If things went badly in court, I wanted the media ready to expose what Todd was doing. The morning of the emergency hearing arrived gray and cold. I dressed in my best suit, a charcoal gray number that Helen had helped me pick out years ago. I looked at myself in the mirror. 67 years old, gray hair, lines on my face from decades of work and worry. But my eyes were clear. My mind was sharp. I was ready to fight. The courtroom was packed. Amanda sat directly behind me, and I could feel her support like a warm hand on my shoulder. Todd and Stephanie sat on the other side, both dressed impeccably, playing the part of concerned family members. Judge Hawthorne took her seat, looking stern and focused. Marcus Vance stood first. Your Honor, we're here because Carson Whitmore's condition is deteriorating rapidly. Dr. Harrison Webb's report clearly indicates cognitive impairment. The emergency nature of this motion stems from recent financial activities that suggest Mr. Whitmore is not capable of managing his substantial assets. We're asking for immediate temporary conservatorship to protect him from himself. Marcus presented Dr. Webb's damning report. He showed the falsified ER records again. He painted a picture of a confused, declining old man who needed immediate protection. Then Frank stood up, and his voice was steel. Your Honor, what we have here is not a concerned son trying to help his father. What we have here is an elaborate fraud designed to steal an elderly man's fortune. Frank called Danny Torres to the stand first. Danny laid out Todd's financial situation, the debts, the failing business, the foreclosure notice, the desperate need for money. Then Frank dropped the first bomb. He presented evidence of Dr. Webb's daughter working for Todd's company. He argued that Dr. Webb had a clear conflict of interest, and his report should be disregarded entirely. Marcus objected strenuously, but Judge Hawthorne silenced him with a raised hand. She was leaning forward now, her expression shifting from concerned to suspicious. Frank called his next witness, a hospital security specialist who testified about the security footage of Todd meeting with Gary Thornton in the parking garage. Then Frank presented the hospital's employment records, showing Dr. Gardner was on vacation during the supposed ER visit. Your Honor, Frank said, these medical records are completely fabricated. They were created by a hospital administrator who was paid $12,000 by Todd Whitmore. We have bank records proving the payment. The courtroom erupted. Marcus was on his feet, objecting, trying to regain control, but the damage was done. Judge Hawthorne looked furious. Counsel, approach, she said, her voice icy. Frank and Marcus went to the bench for a whispered conference. I couldn't hear what was said. but I could see Marcus's face getting redder and redder. When they returned, Judge Hawthorne spoke to the courtroom. I'm dismissing Dr. Webb's report as tainted by conflict of interest. I'm ordering an investigation into the falsified medical records, and I'm denying the emergency conservatorship motion. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt lightheaded. Amanda squeezed my shoulder from behind. Frank allowed himself a small smile. But as we left the courtroom, Todd caught up with me in the hallway. Stephanie was nowhere to be seen. Todd's face was calm, almost serene, and that terrified me more than his anger would have. "You think you won?" he said quietly, just loud enough for me to hear. "I think justice prevailed," I said. "Check your phone, Dad." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a news alert from a major online publication. Millionaire tycoon Carson Whitmore, accused of financial elder abuse against his own mother before her death. My heart stopped. I clicked on the article. It was a detailed story claiming that my mother, who had died 8 years ago at age 92, had accused me before her death of stealing from her estate. The article included what looked like legal documents, statements from alleged family friends, even a supposed interview with a nurse who claimed my mother was afraid of me. It was all lies. Every word. My mother and I had been close until the day she died. She'd lived comfortably in a nursing home I'd paid for, and I'd visited her 3 times a week. But the article made me sound like a monster who'd abused and robbed his own elderly mother. And it was spreading. My phone started buzzing with calls and texts. Friends, business associates, charity boards I served on. Within an hour, 2 charities asked me to step down pending an investigation into these allegations. The hotel manager, previously warm and friendly, stopped by my suite to nervously suggest I might be more comfortable elsewhere. Frank got calls from the bar association asking about my character. Amanda called, crying, "Dad, my boss saw the article. He asked me if it's true. People are talking about me at work." By evening, the story had been picked up by 20 more outlets. It was trending on social media. My face was on cable news. The narrative was set. Wealthy man potentially abused his elderly mother, and now claims his son is trying to stop him from harming others. Frank tried to issue a statement denying everything, threatening defamation lawsuits. But retractions never get the same attention as accusations. The damage was done. Robert Sullivan called. "Carson, I'm sorry. My board of directors is forbidding me from testifying on your behalf. They don't want the company associated with this controversy." Dr. Brennan's medical practice called to say she'd been advised not to involve herself further in my legal matters. One by one, my supporters fell away, afraid of the taint of association. And then the financial attacks began. Joyce, the accountant, called with more bad news. Multiple accounts had been flagged for investigation. Someone had filed anonymous tips with the IRS about suspicious financial activity. My credit cards were suddenly declined. My brokerage firm froze my trading account, pending review. I couldn't access most of my money. That night, I sat alone in my hotel room, which I hadn't paid for in a week because my cards weren't working. The manager was being kind, but I knew that kindness had limits. Gerald called to give his notice. His wife was worried about the association with me hurting his reputation. He was apologetic but firm. My phone rang again. Amanda. Her voice was breaking. "Dad, Brad says I need to stay out of this. For the kids' sake. He doesn't want them associated with the scandal." "I still believe you, Dad." "I do. But I can't testify. I'm so sorry." "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, though it wasn't. "I understand." Old friends stopped returning my calls. People I'd known for decades suddenly couldn't remember my number. Charity boards asked me to resign. Board positions I'd held for years were suddenly unavailable. Within 24 hours, Todd had done what the legal system couldn't. He'd destroyed my reputation, isolated me from support, and cut off my access to resources. And then Frank called with the worst news yet. "Carson, Marcus filed another motion. He's using these abuse allegations as evidence that you're not just incompetent, but potentially dangerous. He's requesting a restraining order preventing you from accessing your accounts pending a full criminal investigation. The hearing is in 1 week. Can he do that? With these allegations making national news? Yes, and there's more." Judge Hawthorne recused herself. She's been receiving threatening letters and doesn't feel she can be impartial. We have a new judge assigned. Who? Judge Arnold Palmer. No relation to the golfer. He's known for being very conservative and protective toward alleged abuse victims. Carson. He's ruled in favor of family reconciliation in 12 of his last 14 cases. He believes in keeping families together almost no matter what, so he'll rule against me. It's very possible, especially with the media narrative being what it is. I sat in my hotel room that night, staring at my reflection in the dark window. My reputation was destroyed. My family was torn apart. My money was frozen. My supporters had abandoned me. The new judge would likely rule against me. I'd won the battle in court today, only to lose the war by nightfall. I thought about Helen again. Would she think I'd done the right thing, fighting back? Or would she say I should have just given Todd some money and been done with it? Frank had actually suggested that very thing. Carson, maybe it's time to consider settling. Give Todd a few million. Make this all go away. But I couldn't. Because this wasn't about money anymore. This was about right and wrong. This was about not letting my son become a man who could destroy his own father for profit, even if it cost me everything. I woke up the next morning to find the story had gone from bad to catastrophic. 20 more news outlets had picked up the elder abuse allegations. National morning shows were discussing my case. Cable news panels were debating whether I was a victim or a villain. My face was everywhere, and the caption was always some version of millionaire accused of abusing elderly mother. I tried to order breakfast and my credit card was declined again. The hotel manager, a kind man named Paul, knocked on my door an hour later. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, looking uncomfortable. "I'm getting pressure from corporate. The negative publicity is affecting the hotel's reputation. Guests are asking questions. I've given you 3 days grace on payment. But I need to know when you can settle your bill." "I understand, Paul. I'm working on it, but I wasn't sure how." Joyce had managed to get me access to one checking account with about $8,000 in it, but everything else was frozen. My wealth was there, $19 million of it, but I couldn't touch it. Frank called at 9 o'clock with more bad news. Robert Sullivan's company issued a press release distancing themselves from you. Dr. Brennan has formally withdrawn as a witness. Senator Hendricks's office said he can't be involved in an ongoing investigation. Carson, we're losing witnesses faster than I can count. What about Danny? What about the evidence of Todd's fraud? We still have that. But Marcus has 6 people lined up to testify that you were cruel to your mother. I've looked into 3 of them. They're actors Todd hired. But proving it in court will be tough. Who's the new judge again? Arnold Palmer. And Carson, I looked deeper into his record. He's very pro-family. He's forced family reconciliation in cases involving actual abuse. He believes family unity is paramount. If he thinks settling with Todd will keep the family together, he'll push hard for that. So even if we prove Todd's lying, the judge might rule against me anyway? It's possible. I felt the walls closing in. My legal position was strong on facts but weak on optics, and Judge Palmer cared more about keeping families together than about justice. Danny called that afternoon. "Carson, I've been digging deeper into Todd's scheme. This is bigger than I thought. Todd started planning this 8 months ago, right after he found out about your wealth. He's systematically created fake evidence, bribed officials, hired actors, planted media stories. He partnered with Marcus Vance, and I found evidence that Marcus has done this before. 3 times. They target wealthy, elderly people, manufacture evidence of incompetence, and force conservatorships. It's a practiced operation. Can we prove it? I'm working on it. But we're running out of time. The next few days were a nightmare. The IRS sent official letters requesting documentation of every transaction over $10,000 for the past 5 years. My brokerage firm informed me my accounts would remain frozen pending resolution of the allegations. 2 banks closed accounts they'd held for me for decades, citing reputational risk. Amanda called every day, crying, torn between her father and her husband, her love and her fear. "Dad, Brad says if I testify for you, he'll file for separation. He says he won't let our kids be associated with this. I don't know what to do." "Don't testify," I told her. Protect your family. I'll be okay. But I wasn't sure I would be. Frank suggested again that I settle. Carson, Todd's attorney, offered a deal. Give Todd $5 million, drop all investigations, and Todd drops the conservatorship. Everyone goes their separate ways. No, Carson, be reasonable. You could lose everything fighting this. The judge could rule against you. Give Todd control of all your assets. $5 million is a lot, but it's better than losing $19 million. It's not about the money, Frank. If I give in now, Todd learns that manipulation and fraud work. He becomes that man forever. I can't do that to him, even if he hates me for it. Frank sighed. You're a more forgiving father than most men would be. But forgiveness wasn't what I was offering. Accountability was. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I walked the hotel hallways at 2 a.m, my mind racing. I thought about Helen, about the life we'd built, about the values we'd tried to instill in our children. I'd failed with Todd. That much was clear. Somewhere along the line, I'd protected him from consequences too many times. I'd cushioned his falls, smoothed his path, and in doing so, I'd taught him that he could get away with anything. Amanda had turned out differently because life had forced her to struggle. She'd faced setbacks and overcome them. She'd built character through hardship. Todd had never had to do that. And now, at 39, he was willing to destroy his own father for money. I'd created this monster, and now I had to stop him, even if it broke me. At 3 a.m, I got a call from Robert Sullivan. Carson, you awake? Can't sleep. Me neither. Listen, I don't care what my board says. You saved my life once, during that crisis with the Henderson contract, remember? You covered my back when everyone else was running. I can't abandon you now. I'm testifying tomorrow. Robert, your company can survive without me if they have to. Some things matter more than business. I'll see you in court. He hung up before I could argue. An hour later, there was a knock on my hotel room door. I opened it to find a woman I didn't recognize. She was maybe 54, with sharp eyes and graying blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a leather jacket. Carson Whitmore, I'm Janet Blackwood. I'm an investigative journalist. Can we talk? I almost closed the door. The last journalist had destroyed me. I know what you're thinking, she said quickly, but I'm not here to hurt you. I've been investigating Marcus Vance for 6 months on a different story about conservatorship abuse. When I saw your case hit the news, I recognized the pattern. I think I can help. I let her in. Janet sat at the small table in my suite and pulled out a laptop. Marcus Vance has been running this scheme for at least 4 years. I've documented 3 other cases where he manipulated elderly people's families to force conservatorships, then siphoned off their money through legal fees and kickbacks. He's very good at it. He targets people who have family tensions he can exploit. She showed me files, documents, testimony from victims' families. The pattern was unmistakable. If I publish this story, Janet said, it could turn public opinion, but I need your permission. I need you to trust me with the full truth. The last journalist I talked to was paid by Todd to write that story about my mother. I know. I have proof of that too. Todd paid him $15,000 through a shell company. I can prove it. I looked at this woman, this stranger offering help when everyone else was running away. Helen used to say you could tell a person's character by what they did when there was nothing in it for them. What do you get out of this? I asked. The truth, Janet said simply, and maybe a Pulitzer nomination if I'm lucky. But mainly, I'm tired of watching predators like Marcus Vance destroy people. Okay, I said. I'll tell you everything. We talked until dawn. I gave her access to everything. Financial records, Danny's investigation, Frank's legal files. She listened, took notes, and asked sharp questions. I can have this story ready by tomorrow afternoon, she said. Right when your hearing starts. Maximum impact. After she left, I tried to rest. The hearing was in 8 hours. At 6 a.m, my phone rang. It was Stephanie, Todd's wife. Her voice was panicked. Carson? It's Todd. He's been in a car accident. He's at County General Hospital. He's critical. My heart stopped. Despite everything, Todd was still my son. What happened? He was driving home late last night. He crashed into a barrier. The doctors say he's stable, but he's got a head injury, broken ribs, internal bleeding. Carson, this is your fault. If you hadn't fought back, if you'd just given him the money, none of this would have happened. If he dies, I'll make sure everyone knows you killed him." She hung up. Frank called 30 seconds later. "Carson, I just heard about Todd. Don't go to the hospital. It's a trap. If you visit him, Marcus will claim you're intimidating a victim. If you don't visit, he'll claim you're a heartless father. Either way, it'll be used against you. He's my son, Frank. I know, but you need to be smart here. The hearing is this afternoon. We're at the critical moment." I sat on the edge of my bed, my head in my hands. My son was in the hospital. The hearing that would determine my future was in hours. I had no good options. Everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for, was hanging by a thread. And Todd, even from a hospital bed, was still winning. Against Frank's advice, I went to the hospital. I had to. Whatever Todd had done, whatever he'd become, he was still the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd helped with homework, the young man I'd watched graduate from college. Frank and Robert came with me. We arrived at County General at 8 in the morning. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and anxiety. We found Todd's room on the 4th floor. Stephanie stood guard outside like a sentinel. When she saw me, her face twisted with rage. "You're not going in there," she hissed. "I just want to see him. I want to know he's okay." "He's not okay. He has a skull fracture, 3 broken ribs, and internal bleeding. And it's all because you wouldn't just help your own son when he needed you." "Stephanie, let me see him, please." "No." She pulled out her phone. "Security? There's someone harassing me on the 4th floor. Please come quickly." People in the hallway were staring now. Other patients' families, nurses, doctors. Someone had their phone out, recording. "Stephanie, I'm not harassing you. I'm trying to see my son. You've done enough damage." Her voice was loud, theatrical, designed for the cameras she knew were recording. "You drove him to this. Your own flesh and blood, and you wouldn't help him." 2 security guards arrived. They were professional but firm. "Sir, you need to leave. This is my son." "Sir, the family member present has asked you to leave. You need to go." They escorted me out, one on each side, walking me down the hallway past staring faces and recording phones. By the time we reached the parking lot, the video was already on social media. The caption, "Heartless millionaire confronts critically injured son's grieving wife at hospital." In the car, Frank said quietly, "That couldn't have gone worse." But he was wrong. It could get worse. And it did. While we were dealing with the hospital situation, Danny had been working. He called as we drove back to the hotel. "Carson, I've got Gary Thornton on tape, the hospital administrator who faked the records. He confessed everything. Todd paid him $12,000 to create those fraudulent ER documents. Gary's in deep gambling debt, and Todd threatened to expose him if he didn't cooperate. But now Gary's scared. He's willing to testify if he gets immunity." "That's good news," Frank said on speakerphone. "That's very good news. There's more," Danny continued. "I've been looking into Todd's accident. I pulled traffic camera footage from near the crash site. Carson, this wasn't an accident. Todd's car accelerated into that barrier. It was deliberate. He staged it. I felt sick. He hurt himself on purpose. His blood alcohol level was .09, just barely over the legal limit. Enough to blur judgment, but not enough to cause a real accident. The footage shows him accelerating in a straight line directly into a concrete barrier at about 30 miles per hour. Fast enough to cause injury, but slow enough not to be fatal. This was calculated. He staged his own accident to make me look bad before the hearing, I said, and to gain sympathy, Frank added. Brilliant, in a horrible way. The hearing is at 2 o'clock. We have 6 hours. We returned to Frank's office and worked frantically. Robert brought more documents from the old company files. He'd found records of Todd's problematic behavior dating back 23 years. Multiple instances of lying, stealing, manipulation. Every time, I'd protected him, covered for him. given him another chance. "Carson," Robert said gently, "you're a good father. But maybe you were too good. You never let him face consequences." He was right. And now I was paying for my years of misplaced mercy. Robert had found something else. A letter from my mother, written 6 months before she died. It had been in her safety deposit box at the bank, and Robert had gotten access through the estate executor. Frank read it aloud. "My dearest Carson, I'm writing this in case anyone ever questions your character after I'm gone. You have been the most devoted, loving son a mother could ask for. You visit me faithfully. You make sure I have everything I need. You never ask for anything in return. If anyone ever says otherwise, know that I trusted you completely with my life and my love. Your mother." The letter was dated and notarized. It was proof that the elder abuse allegations were complete fiction. Janet called at noon. "My story is ready. It goes live in 2 hours, right when the hearing starts. I've got Marcus Vance's entire operation exposed. I've got testimony from families he's destroyed. I've got financial records showing his kickback schemes. This is going to blow up." At 1 o'clock, we headed to the courthouse. Amanda met us in the lobby. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. "Brad and I had a huge fight," she said. "I told him I'm testifying no matter what he says. This is my father. I can't abandon you." I hugged her tight. "Thank you, sweetheart. I mean, Brad's probably right that it'll cause problems for us. But some things are more important than convenience." Judge Palmer's courtroom was larger than Judge Hawthorne's had been. The gallery was packed with people, including several journalists Janet had tipped off. Marcus Vance sat at his table, looking confident and polished. Todd was obviously absent, still in the hospital. Just before the hearing began, Marcus approached us in the hallway. He had that smooth smile that made my skin crawl. "Carson, I'm authorized to offer you a deal. One last chance. Give Todd $5 million. Drop all investigations." And he drops the conservatorship. Everyone walks away. "You can avoid the embarrassment of this hearing." Frank looked at me. "It's not a bad deal, Carson. The new judge is unpredictable. I had 60 seconds to decide. Take the deal and lose $5 million but keep my freedom, or fight and risk losing everything." I looked at Amanda's exhausted face, at Frank's worried expression, at Robert's steady gaze. I thought about Helen, about the values she'd taught our children, about doing what's right even when it costs everything. "No deal," I said. "I'm fighting this." Marcus's smile faded. "Your funeral, old man." The courtroom doors opened, and we walked in to face whatever came next. Judge Arnold Palmer was a lean man in his early 60s, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He settled into his seat and surveyed the courtroom with an expression that gave away nothing. "This is a continuation of the conservatorship petition filed by Todd Whitmore against his father, Carson Whitmore," he began. His voice was measured, almost gentle. "Before we start, I want to make something clear. I value family unity above almost everything else. My goal here is not to pick winners and losers, but to help this family heal. With that in mind, let's proceed." My heart sank. Frank had been right. This judge was going to push for settlement, for family reconciliation, regardless of the facts. Marcus Vance stood first. "Your Honor, this is a tragic case of a family torn apart by an elderly man's declining mental state. Todd Whitmore is currently hospitalized due to the stress his father's erratic behavior has caused. His wife Stephanie is here to speak on his behalf." Stephanie took the stand. She'd dressed perfectly for the role of devoted, suffering wife. She testified about Todd's desperation, his love for his father, his genuine concern. She painted me as a stubborn, irrational old man refusing help, driving my own son to despair. "He just wanted to help his father," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "And now my husband is in the hospital with a skull fracture because of the stress." Marcus presented his evidence again. The fabricated ER records showing me as confused, the statements from neighbors, the concerns about my financial decisions. He emphasized the recent media allegations about elder abuse of my mother. "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice dripping with false concern, "Carson Whitmore has a documented history of poor judgment and possible abuse. His son is merely trying to protect him. and the community from further harm. A limited conservatorship is not only appropriate, it's necessary. Judge Palmer nodded thoughtfully, taking notes. Then it was Frank's turn. Your Honor, what you've just heard is a carefully constructed fraud designed to steal an elderly man's fortune. I'd like to call Gary Thornton to the stand. Gary Thornton walked in looking like a man facing execution. He was sworn in and sat in the witness box, avoiding everyone's eyes. Frank approached him. Mr. Thornton, you're a hospital administrator at County General, correct? Yes. Did you create falsified medical records for Carson Whitmore? Gary's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Why? Todd Whitmore paid me $12,000. He knew I had gambling debts. He threatened to report me to the hospital board if I didn't help him. And these medical records, showing Mr. Whitmore as confused and disoriented during an ER visit, were completely fabricated? Yes. Mr. Whitmore was never confused. He came in for chest pain. It was heartburn. He was discharged within 2 hours. Todd gave me the story he wanted in the records, and I created them. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Palmer's expression shifted, becoming colder. Marcus objected, but Frank had documentation. Bank records showing the $12,000 payment. Hospital records proving Dr. Gardner wasn't working that day. Security footage of Todd meeting Gary in the parking garage. Next, Frank called Danny Torres. Danny presented his investigation into Todd's finances, the debts, the failing business, the foreclosure notice, the desperate need for money. He showed the pattern of Marcus Vance's previous conservatorship schemes. He presented evidence of 3 other elderly victims. Then Frank played the traffic camera footage of Todd's staged accident. The courtroom watched in shocked silence as Todd's car accelerated in a straight line into the concrete barrier. Todd Whitmore deliberately injured himself to gain sympathy and manipulate these proceedings, Frank said. This is not a concerned son. This is a calculated predator. Robert Sullivan testified next, presenting the old company files documenting Todd's lifelong pattern of manipulation and dishonesty. He presented the records showing I'd covered for Todd repeatedly over the years, always protecting him from consequences. Amanda took the stand, her voice shaking but firm. She testified about Todd's attempts to manipulate her, about his lies, about the financial pressure he'd been under. My brother is desperate, she said, and desperation made him willing to destroy our father. Finally, Frank presented my mother's letter. The words were read aloud again in the courtroom, my mother's voice from beyond the grave defending my character. Judge Palmer took a brief recess. While we waited, Janet's story went live. I watched on Frank's phone as it spread across the internet. Attorney Marcus Vance's predatory conservatorship scheme exposed. The article detailed everything. Within minutes, it was trending on social media. News channels were picking it up. When court resumed, Judge Palmer had clearly seen the article. His expression was granite. He called Todd's hospital directly and asked to speak with Todd's doctor. On speakerphone, the doctor confirmed that Todd's injuries, while real, were consistent with a low-speed, deliberate collision. The doctor had noted concerns in Todd's file about the circumstances. Judge Palmer then did something unexpected. He called the hospital and asked them to bring Todd to the courthouse via ambulance if he was medically stable enough. Todd arrived 30 minutes later in a wheelchair, looking pale but alert. Judge Palmer questioned Todd directly, presenting him with evidence piece by piece. The fake medical records, the staged accident, the financial desperation, the payment to Gary Thornton. Todd tried to maintain his victim story at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. Under the judge's sharp questioning, he finally cracked. I was desperate, Todd said, his voice breaking. I was losing everything. My business, my house. I thought Dad had all this money and was just hoarding it while I struggled. I thought if I could just get access to some of it, I could save my family. I know the accident was stupid. I just wanted sympathy. I didn't know what else to do. It wasn't a full confession, but it was enough. Judge Palmer sat back in his chair, his expression a mix of disappointment and anger. I'm going to take a 15-minute recess to make my decision, he said. Those 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. Amanda held my hand. Frank reviewed his notes. Robert sat quietly beside me, a steady presence. When Judge Palmer returned, his expression was steel. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented today," he began. "I've heard testimony from multiple witnesses. I've seen documentation of fraud, manipulation, and calculated deception. Todd Whitmore's petition for conservatorship is denied in its entirety. Furthermore, I'm ordering Mr. Todd Whitmore to pay all of Carson Whitmore's legal fees incurred in this matter. I'm referring Marcus Vance to the State Bar Association for disciplinary proceedings, and I'm issuing a restraining order. Todd Whitmore is prohibited from contacting Carson Whitmore for a period of 5 years except through legal counsel." He paused, looking directly at Todd. "Mr. Whitmore, you are a young man. You have time to change the path you're on. But if you continue this behavior, if you contest this ruling or attempt any further legal action against your father, I will personally refer this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Do you understand?" Todd nodded, tears running down his face. Judge Palmer turned to me. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm sorry for what you've endured. The system should have protected you better. Your conservatorship file is sealed and dismissed with prejudice, meaning it cannot be refiled. You are free to manage your affairs as you see fit." He banged his gavel, and it was over. In the hallway, I was surrounded by my team. Amanda hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Robert shook my hand with tears in his eyes. Frank allowed himself a rare smile. Danny clapped me on the shoulder. Janet asked for that exclusive interview I'd promised, and I agreed. Marcus Vance left quickly through a side exit, already on his phone, probably calling his own attorney. Stephanie wheeled Todd out without looking at any of us. Over the next few weeks, the fallout continued. Marcus Vance was disbarred after Janet's investigation revealed the full scope of his schemes. Gary Thornton lost his job but avoided criminal charges in exchange for his testimony. The journalist who'd written the false story about my mother was exposed and fired. The charities that had asked me to resign called to apologize and invite me back. Danny's investigation provided enough evidence to pursue criminal charges against Todd. But I made a decision. I told Frank not to file them. "He's still my son," I said. "What the judge ordered is consequence enough. Let him live with what he did. Let him find his own way back to integrity, if he can." Instead, I did something different. I set up trust funds for Todd's children, my grandchildren, that would pay for their education and help them when they turned 25. Todd couldn't touch the money, but his kids would be provided for. I also established the Whitmore Foundation for Elder Justice, dedicated to helping elderly people fight predatory conservatorships. I hired Danny full-time to investigate cases and provide free assistance to victims. Robert joined the board of directors. A month after the hearing, I received a letter from Todd. It was short, written in his handwriting on plain paper. "Dad, I'm sorry. I was desperate and made terrible choices that I'll regret for the rest of my life. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm in therapy now. I filed for bankruptcy, and I'm starting over from nothing. Maybe that's what I needed all along. I hope someday, maybe years from now, we can talk. Not about money, just as father and son. I hope. Todd." I read the letter 3 times. I didn't respond right away. Forgiveness takes time. Trust, once broken so completely, takes even longer to rebuild. But I didn't throw the letter away. I kept it in my desk drawer. I moved into a comfortable condo downtown. Nothing extravagant, just a place that felt like home. Amanda visited every weekend with her kids. Brad had apologized for pressuring her to stay out of it, and their marriage was healing. I taught my grandchildren about values, about integrity, about the importance of earning what you have. I told them stories about their grandmother Helen, about the life we'd built together, about what really matters. 3 days a week, I volunteered at the Whitmore Foundation. We'd already helped 8 elderly people fight off predatory conservatorship attempts. Each case we won felt like a small victory for justice. Gerald came back as my driver. We'd become genuine friends. He said he'd never doubted me, and I chose to believe him. Robert and I had lunch every Thursday at a small diner downtown. We talked about business, about life, about the grandchildren he had, and the grandchildren I had. We talked about second chances and redemption. I sat in my condo one evening, 6 months after the hearing, looking at a photo of Helen. She was laughing in the picture, her head thrown back, her eyes full of life. I missed her every day. My phone rang. It was someone from the foundation, a woman named Dorothy whose son was trying to force her into a conservatorship despite her perfect mental health. She needed help. I smiled. The same smile I'd had when Todd told me to get a job or go to a nursing home. The smile of a man who knows his purpose. "Tell Dorothy I'll be there tomorrow," I said. "We'll fight this together." I hung up and looked at Helen's photo again. "I think I'm finally doing what I was meant to do," I told her. Real work, meaningful work, helping people who can't help themselves. For the first time in years, I felt completely, truly alive. I learned several truths through this ordeal. Respect cannot be demanded through blood relation alone. It must be earned through character and integrity. True family is built on honor and honesty, not obligation or genetics. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is setting firm boundaries and refusing to enable destructive behavior. Standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything, is never a mistake. Because your integrity, your values, your sense of self, these are the things no one can take away unless you give them up. I almost gave them up. I almost settled, almost let Todd win, almost chose peace over principle. But Helen wouldn't have wanted that. She'd taught me that doing the right thing isn't always the easy thing. It's often the hardest thing, but it's always worth it. My son may never speak to me again. That's a real possibility, and it breaks my heart. But I gave him something more valuable than money or reconciliation. I gave him consequences. I gave him the chance to face what he'd done and choose to become better. Whether he takes that chance is up to him. As for me, I wake up every morning knowing I fought for truth when lies surrounded me. I stood firm when pressure mounted. I chose integrity when compromise would have been easier. And that knowledge, that certainty that I did the right thing, is worth more than all $19 million in my accounts. Some people say I should have just given Todd the money. That family harmony is worth any price. But I disagree. Real harmony comes from honest relationships, not from buying peace with silence and money. Real love sometimes means saying no. Real family sometimes means holding people accountable. I hope Todd finds his way. I hope he builds a life based on his own work, his own integrity, his own earned success. I hope someday, years from now, we can sit across from each other and have a real conversation, father and son, built on truth instead of manipulation. Until then, I have work to do, people to help, a foundation to run, grandchildren to teach, a life to live with purpose and meaning. Helen would be proud, I think. And that matters more than anything else. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between family harmony and doing what's right? Have you ever faced a situation where the easy path and the right path split in opposite directions? What did you choose? And do you regret it? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about integrity and family and the hard choices we all face, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and maybe learn something from them. And if you want to hear more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges, about courage and redemption and standing up for what's right, please subscribe to this channel. There are so many more stories to tell, and I'm grateful to share them with you. Finally, if you know someone who might need to hear this story, someone facing family pressure or difficult choices or wondering if standing up for themselves is worth it, please share this with them. Sometimes we all need to be reminded that doing the right thing, even when it costs us everything, is never the wrong choice. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope wherever you are, whatever challenges you're facing, you find the courage to stand firm in your values. Life is too short to compromise on integrity. Your character is the one thing that's truly yours, that no one can take unless you give it away. Take care of yourselves. Hold tight to what matters. And remember that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones most worth fighting. Until next time.